Was the 3-game suspension enough?
Absolutely not. The suspension should have been far more severe. And I'm of the mindset at this particular moment in time, I'm upset that Urban Meyer has not been fired. I did not feel that way until I saw the press conference last night. Prior to the press conference, I thought it should have been a minimum of 5 games. I thought that he certainly should have missed the game against Penn State coming up. Give me a couple of Big Ten games on the schedule. Clearly he lied. Clearly he got caught. There is no doubt about that. But then you watched him in the press conference last night. No contrition whatsoever, no remorse, no regrets. Couldn't even mention Courtney Smith's name. Yep. It was just an absolute disgrace. His performance.
Couldn't even acknowledge her.
Couldn't even acknowledge her. And what I saw, was an individual that came across as if he were offended that he even had to be there, that clearly was pointing the finger of blame in her direction. And I saw a university, The Ohio State, essentially embarrass itself, because this board of trustees, to come up with 3 games where you've got 1 game that he's completely suspended, but then allowing him to conduct practices leading up to game day for the following 2 games, okay? And the only Big Ten game you really miss is against Rutgers, for crying out loud. They've essentially said, you know what? We weren't winning before Urban Meyer got here. Since he's got here, we want 90.1% of our games. We're going to go with that. And that's basically what they've done. It was a disgraceful performance on his part. No contrition or remorse whatsoever. And I basically think it was emblematic of a good old boys network that just was put on display before our very eyes. And it has me thinking about the 31 arrests that occurred when Urban Meyer was at Florida. It has me thinking that he should never be trusted again to be an individual that's leaned upon for the truth, because he has no compunction for lying. And even when he lied to the media, all right, and ultimately got busted about doing that, even in his statement last night, he said there was no effort to mislead. Well, what the hell is lying? I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I cannot believe how flagrant he was in this press conference. After that press conference, I said, this man should go.
But this is the worst part. And clearly now we know, guys, he's 0-2 in press conferences, but he botched the first one. So you thought even here he could pretend to act like he had some contrition, but 0 at all. Max, what was your reaction?
Well, as I mentioned on Get Up, the good old boys network that Stephen A. just mentioned is exactly right. That's what seems to me is going on here. First of all, the 3-game suspension is not enough. And it's amazing, and I also agree with Stephen A., that many of us, I feel, if it came out, if the facts came out, Urban Meyer kicked it up the chain of command, he reported it, he did the right thing, and what he's guilty of is lying to the media. We would have said, okay, maybe 3 games, lying to the media, that's not a fireable offense. But the way it's one thing not to bring up Courtney Smith's name. It's another thing when the media brings it up for you and asks you about it. It is so obnoxious at that point to then say, well, I feel remorse for hold on, dude, what? They gave it to you. They said you address her. This is being reported as he never even mentioned her. That's true. The media did it for him, and he still assiduously avoided mentioning her. That is bad. I also want to say, that's my basic impression. I want to say, I think the university here, it seems to me, is acting in bad faith. Why would you not release the 23-page summary of the investigation until after your coach, AD, and president have faced the press? Why would you do that? Well, maybe here's why. One of the points in the investigation that they found was that Zach and Courtney Smith, well, according to Urban Meyer, he met with Zach and Courtney Smith in his office and in Florida in 2009, and was told at that point that Zach Smith's arrest for battery on a pregnant woman, was based on false information given to the police. But the investigators seemed to feel that the only one present in that meeting was not that Courtney wasn't present, only Zach Smith. So he's getting Zach Smith's side of the story. So when you hear things like Urban and Shelley Meyer believed that Courtney Smith, Zach Smith's wife, who was assaulted, was not totally truthful to. Well, where's that coming from? It's coming from Zach Smith's apparently report to Urban Meyer in his meeting alone with Meyer, without Courtney Smith there. There are all kinds of questions like this had the investigation been released before, the summary of the investigation been released beforehand, that would have been asked by the media. But I would say that the Good Old Boys Network is right. Earl Bruce's grandson, Zach Smith's Earl Bruce's grandson, Urban Meyer seemed to be taking care of him. The university now seems to be taking care of themselves. And a 3-game suspension seems as though they sat down and said, what is the lightest suspension we can get away with giving that will appease people, where we can just skate by with the lightest suspension to stave off enough anger?
They basically implemented this excuse where medication led to him. Oh gosh,
I'm glad you brought that up.
Led to him, for being forgetful. So let
memory loss.
So let me get the memory loss. So let me get this straight. You win 90.1% of your games, Paul Feinbaum. 90.1% of your games running one of the elite football programs in America. For those of you that may not understand, football can be a very, very complicated sport. And when you are the head coach, essentially an overseer, it's not just the offense and defense, it's all the intricacies that come with it, the offensive line, the wide receivers, the quarterbacks, the running backs. You're the overseer of all of this. You got the schedule, you got administrative folks to deal with. You got a compliance department that you were supposed to inform when you learned about what transpired in 2015, which you failed to do as well. And they leaned on the excuse that, he was taking medication that induced memory loss. This is not just about Urban Meyer.
Let me say something about that quickly.
It's about an institution that's been complicit. That's what this comes down to.